Hey, good afternoon, everybody. So excited for today's Doctor is in call. It's October, holy cow. But that just means things are about to get crazy and exciting. So with us always is Anna and Ryan from Kennedy Capital. Guys, biotech market, healthcare market. It's been a weird couple of months here, exciting couple of months. Can't wait to hear what you guys have to say today.
Sounds good. Good afternoon. Good morning, Jonathan. Whatever it is to all of our listeners out there. So yeah, there's been a lot going on all year. We're going to start briefly with a high level just because there's been so much news, and then we're going to get into two stocks. One a big positive mover in the space, one a big negative mover in the space, both for very different reasons. So kind of fun to break those down for you. So first of all, a couple weeks ago, we had our first most favored nation pricing announcement in the Oval Office. President Trump joined by Pfizer executives to announce what is the first of many deals to come on most favored nations. This is focused on Medicaid, which I think was a little bit of a surprise to the investment community. Was it going to be on the Medicaid side? Was it going to be on the Medicare side, which is a little bit more bigger, a little more impactful? And this deal focused more on the Medicaid side. And it seems like future deals with other large pharma, other large biotechnology companies will also, at least initially, be on the Medicaid side. That caused a lot of exuberance in the sector. If you go back a couple weeks ago, you'll see not only Pfizer, but AstraZeneca and AbbVie and many other large pharma companies all went up significantly on that day. And there was even a little bit of follow through on just the excitement of, boy, is all this stuff now kind of behind us. So if you think back to, November last year, December last year, I think January and February of this year, on these calls, all we really talked about was what's President Trump going to do on most favored nation? What's he going to do on pharmaceutical tariffs? What's RFK going to do? How is the FDA going to change? Remember, there's a whole host of stuff going on that was negative for the sector. And this sort of leads me into, let's start thinking about 2026. It's October. We're not quite there yet, but we're getting close. And the good news is, I think a lot of this stuff is behind the sector. If you think about the NIH and the life sciences, yes, we've taken some hits there. Those companies, though, have plowed through it. Now we're going to annualize those negative impacts and hopefully get back to growth. We're getting most favored nation announcements that, quite frankly, are not terribly impactful to the companies. The companies are going to be able to move past those, grow through them. They've avoided significant tariff hits by making these agreements with the administration. That's very important. We've delayed the large tariff impact now by multiple years because these pharmaceutical companies are building in the United States. That's key. And so we think the setup for 2026 is you start to think about healthcare, large pharma, small biotech. It's just pretty good, I think, and I'm excited. I mean, it's much more clear than it was entering 2025. And large pharma, large biotech, if they're in the clear, if they have certainty, if they know their path forward, that just allows them, those management teams, to focus on the future, to focus on the pipeline, to focus on commercialization. And what does that mean? That means interest in small biotech, M&A, we think should tick up a little bit, especially with a lower interest rate environment. So that's a
So
little bit of
Ryan,
my
can I
2026
ask? I
review.
gotta ask that the XBI is up like 42% over the last 6 months, and only half of that is over the past 3 months where we've had this announcement. So there's got to be more percolating, so to speak, in this biotech world than just news like this. Can you shed any more light on that?
Yeah, it's been so off the lows of April, right? Remember all that bad stuff I was talking about late 24, early 25, and that manifested itself. And if you look at the XBI chart, in us hitting the lows in April. And then what happened since then was, okay, maybe things aren't that bad. Maybe it's priced into these various stocks. And that's what we started to see. And we started to see a little, maybe we're going to lower interest rates. So we started to see a little bit of um, a picking up the pace, if you will, in the right direction of, hey, there's some good news actually in this space, or the bad news isn't going to be that bad, and we've already priced all of that in. And so I think the market has, if you look at the XBI over a longer period, Jonathan, you'll see it's roughly, I don't know, flattish with sort of the fall of last year, give or take. So what does that mean? That means we waded through all of the noise, right? The sector went down, the sector went back up, And now I think we're in a spot where we have to look at 2026 and say, what could the sector look like? Now remember, entering 2025, what did the sector look like? It looked like there's a lot of headwinds here, and I don't know how any of this is going to play out.
Mhm.
If you look into 2026 now, sitting here today, you think there are still some headwinds. There's still some uncertainty. There always will be, of course. It's the government and it's healthcare, but there's a heck of a lot less, and there's a heck of a lot more, I think, clarity coming, and I'm excited. I'm excited for the space and the industry, and I think there's a lot to look forward to.
Well, we did joke your first like 6 calls of the year, you'd say uncertainty 20 times a call. So it's quite the change from the beginning of the year.
No more. I mean, I'm always a healthcare bull, but I try to tell it like it is. But I'm encouraged as we enter the new year.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Good.
And
Thank you.
and and so and Anna's here to present some data here that I think is also encouraging for biotech investors.
Yeah.
Yeah, and sort of related. So both the companies I'll touch on today have spoken about M&A, right? So the potential to be acquired by a larger player, and that is only going to be possible in large volumes of companies as these larger players become more certain about what their, 5-year, 10-year plan looks like. And so as we get more clarity on tariffs, MFN, everything Ryan mentioned, hopefully we start to see more momentum in the M&A space in biotech, which would be great. So I'm going to start with the bad news, get that out of the way. This one is Moonlake Immunotherapeutics. The ticker is MLTX. We have an image of the stock chart here. You can see a massive plummet. The only thing that can cause that typically is bad data, and that's exactly what we saw. So both the companies that I'm going to talk to you about today are in dermatology. So this one is specifically targeting something called IL-17 receptor. This is kind of a newer space. So there is one approved asset on the market that targets IL-17, and there's 5 or more candidates in the pipeline, just from various companies, and this is one of them. And they're all slightly different. They're all different affinities for the receptor, different size molecules, and so they all have pros and cons. And so, as Moonlake pushes through clinical trials, they had some very encouraging phase 2 data, and people were getting really excited about the space. And then this phase 3 trial, one of their 2 phase 3 trials, ended up not working. And so you can see in my second bullet point, they showed a delta versus placebo, so placebo adjusted change or improvement in skin clearance in this dermatology indication of 17%. So first of all, that's a pretty small number. But the real kicker here is that it did not compare well with their phase 2, which showed 29% delta. So that's a big difference. Or versus competitors, which showed over 30% delta to placebo. And so when you think about the indication, which is hidradenitis suppurativa, we shorten that to HS because it's quite a mouthful. This is a really intense condition where people have these essentially tunnels that happen in the skin because the immune system is fighting hair follicles. So if you think about all the places in your body where you have hair follicles, these tunnels can occur, and they're painful. They have flare-ups, irritation, redness, really a burdensome disease. And, I think patients were hoping for kind of beating the bar, beating what's approved. And so this result was a big negative. And as I'd mentioned, this company has talked publicly about, its dreams for being acquired. So not only does this result sort of muddy the waters in terms of would they actually take any share if approved on the market, it also muddies the waters of what kind of large player would want to add this to their pipeline if it's not as competitive as was thought after the phase 2. So it's a big bummer for patients. It's a big bummer for the company and its shareholders. And while there is no cure for HS, there is the currently approved molecule, which also targets IL-17, just in a slightly different way. And so for now, they can work with that. So that's our first bad news. Jonathan, you have a
Before you
question?
move forward, Anna, I gotta ask, like, what is it like on the floor of a company when they have to publish this information and their stock goes from 62 to 10 in one
Yeah.
day? What is it? What happens? Or does everyone just leave? Is it shut off the lights, go find a new job? Do they keep going? Give us a quick glimpse into that world.
I have mixed feelings, right? I'm happy that I've never had to live through that myself. But I'm also, I'm bummed that I can't give you a firsthand account. What we have done is we've met with companies the day after. And I can tell you that, CEOs are very, very visibly sad when we meet with them after an event like this, right? No one thinks that their trial will fail. If they did, they wouldn't invest the money in it. And so you can only imagine that as you get closer and closer to the people actually running that trial, the disappointment just has to be massive. I don't know if there's a mass exodus on the day of. I would hope not, but I imagine morale in the office is quite low after something like this for sure. And companies typically restructure following an announcement like this in order to conserve cash and kind of figure out what they do next.
All right. So the scientists have to, I mean, you're a scientist. I'm sure you've had hypotheses you thought would go one way and went another way.
That's
Move
just
on to
how
the
it
next
goes.
one. Is that what a
Move on to
science?
the
It's
next
kind of
one.
it's like a hitter in the World Series. I struck out, but the next pitch I'm going to hit something like that.
Just
Yeah.
got to keep trying.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
So then
Well,
on to
let's hear a good one. Change
yeah.
gears. Give us the good news. Sorry,
Let's be
Moonlight.
upbeat. So this is Protagonist Therapeutics, ticker is PTGX, also in dermatology, slightly different indication. Their lead indication is psoriasis. So unlike HS, there are no tunnels in the skin, but it is still an autoimmune disease where you have, itchy, scaly, sometimes painful occurrences on the skin. And a measure of improvement is essentially skin clearance, just like in HS. So it's a similar kind of assessment of a drug versus placebo. How much skin clearance can you get? And so this drug is really interesting, the drug that they have, because it's an oral molecule. And everything else in their drug class targeting IL-23 this time instead of IL-17 is injectable. And that's because it's a protein. So peptides are tiny pieces of proteins. And typically, in order to not be digested by your stomach, in order to get to where they need to go, they need to be injected. But Protagonist actually offers this platform, which is proprietary. So we don't know exactly how they do it. But they make these molecules, which are otherwise have to be injected, into oral peptides. So they can be delivered via a daily pill. And so that is their platform. They apply this to multiple targets. Their one target, IL-23, which is icotrokinra, which I shortened to ICO. Again, another mouthful. That one they partnered with J&J years ago, back when they were a very small company. And as it's progressed through trials, it's become pretty clear that it's a very good drug. And so, just last Friday, there were some rumors circulating about a potential takeout of Protagonist by J&J, their current partner, obviously centered around this asset. And so we pasted, a picture of the stock chart here, and you can see that there's been the initial jump, which was on Friday, but then there's been some fluctuation. And so I think this is really interesting because it essentially reflects what is the value of that lead asset, which is the ICO, which treats psoriasis. It may also be able to treat other conditions like IBD, other places where other IL-23s are approved. But then what I don't show on the slide is the rest of their pipeline. So Protagonist, because they're a platform, they have a lot that's preclinical that we don't even know about. And then they also have two assets that we do know about. One is an IL-17, like Moonlake, but oral. And another is actually an obesity molecule, something that J&J does not have. And so now the debate, right, we don't know yet what the offer price is. We don't know yet if the deal will really happen. But the debate and why there's this price action on the stock is around, does J&J want the entire company? Do they just want one molecule? Would they buy the company for one molecule and then kind of ditch the rest of it? And so I think it's just kind of interesting story to look at and see how small biotech can partner. And then there's still that possibility of M&A later on.
How much volume trades typically for one of these type of companies like a Protagonist PTGX? Are we seeing mostly insiders? Is it kind of general street people? What are your thoughts about that or observations?
Around the deal, Jonathan, or around
Yeah,
the
or just
speculation?
around the deal, around the noise, sure.
Yeah, so I think there was about I'm looking at volume real quick on last Friday. There's about a 6 to 7x increase in the normal daily trading average volume
Okay,
on the stock. So pretty significant spike.
gotcha.
A lot of people, as
Thank
Anna
you.
said, there's a lot of price action, people trying to triangulate what's the price going to be, what are they going to value the future assets at, and
Yeah.
it's always a
Well,
little tougher on
Once
these
it hits the
platform
Wall
companies.
Street Journal, then then it starts to get percolated a bit more, I would assume.
Yes, it does. Yes, it
Hmm.
does.
So you guys got to be thinking going into the end of the year here, we're going to see more of these type of deals, or is it just going to be existing companies continue to attract capital because uncertainty is starting to become certain because tech has gone a little hot because these things have been beaten up for so long? Any hypotheses or rationale for what you think this is going to be like towards the end of the year?
Yeah, it's always hard to say what does it look like in the last couple months of the year. I just think more clarity is going to be helpful. Whether there's a deal or not between now and December, we'll see, hopefully. But I think what we're really just looking forward is a steady market that will provide just sort of a nice backdrop for steady cadence of deals over time. And the FDA seems, a year ago we were worried about what's the FDA going to look like? Is there going to be no one left? Are they going to change the rules of the road? Um, it seems fine. It seems fine. Companies are executing. Their drugs are being reviewed. It's good. And so I think as we've said before in this call, good science will be rewarded. That's what we're looking for. And that's gonna win out the day. And those companies will ultimately, they're either gonna be successful as a standalone or they're gonna be acquired. More often than not, they'll be acquired. But if you use good science as your North Star, you're gonna end up okay more times than not.
Well, this is great call. These are two really interesting companies here, and it seems from where I sat, the XBI or biotech, it's just due. I mean, after 2020, that weird year where it spiked up, and then 2021, 22, 23, 20, just seems like, good grief, this sector doesn't usually have that long of a time where it's just beat up, beat up. So coming, maybe rebounding to the mean, getting some life back into a place that's been ignored. Stop buying the circular AI investing carousel. Like all these things are positive. I'm feeling good about the sector, and it sounds like we can move past uncertainty and we can find a new word, optimistic, hopeful.
Yeah, 2026, a new word. Hopefully, we'll be optimistic.
I love
I'm
it.
optimistic about that.
Great. Well, Anna, Ryan, thanks for the optimistic ending and the great call today. Appreciate your time.